All right, today we are going deep. We're diving into the decades-long war that's been raging right in the heart of Rio de Janeiro. We're going to break down these massive police operations, get into the origins of Brazil's infamous Red Command, and talk about the brutal reality for all the people who are caught right in the middle of it. You know, the sun hadn't even come up when Rio de Janeiro woke up to the sounds of a war zone. And for thousands of people living in the city's north zone, this isn't some metaphor. This is the real-life sound just outside their window. Just try to imagine that for a second. You don't wake up to your alarm clock. You wake up to the whump, whump, whump of helicopter blades overhead, sirens screaming through the air, and that terrifying, unmistakable rattle of gunfire echoing down the streets. That was the scene when this mega operation kicked off. And the target? Territories controlled by one of the most powerful, most entrenched criminal organizations in the entire country. This wasn't just another police action. No, this was straight-up urban warfare. Okay, so let's get into what was actually happening on the ground here. We're talking about a huge, coordinated operation in the favela complexes of Alemán and Peña. These are massive, sprawling communities in Rio's North Zone. And the state's goal, well, it was pretty simple: take back control. The scale of this thing is just staggering. We're talking about more than 2,500 agents hitting the streets. This was no small raid. This was a full-on incursion. It was the state making a very clear, very loud statement that they were going head-to-head with the faction. At the immediate fallout for regular people, it was immense. As these heavily armed criminals started fighting back, the whole area just went into lockdown. Schools had to shut their doors, health clinics stopped running, and ordinary folks became prisoners inside their own homes, literally trapped by a war they never asked for. But look, to really understand this war, you have to understand the enemy. So who exactly is the Comando Vermelho, the Red Command? And how in the world did this group get so powerful? So here's the thing. The Red Command wasn't born on the streets. Its story actually starts inside Rio's prisons back in the late 70s. And it was this really bizarre but powerful alliance between common bank robbers and drug dealers and political prisoners who'd been locked up by the military dictatorship. The common criminals learned ideology and organization from them. And over the decades, it just grew. It was like a cancer. From that prison alliance, it exploded out onto the streets in the 90s, taking over favelas one by one. And today, it's this incredibly sophisticated criminal machine, a transnational empire that moves millions of dollars, controls international trafficking routes, and enforces its own brutal set of laws where the state can't reach. And that brings us to the most important part of this whole story: the people. The families, the workers, the regular folks who live in these communities, just caught between two incredibly powerful warring forces. It creates this absolutely impossible situation. On one side, you have the state, saying its mission is to bring peace. But on the other side, you've got the faction, which rules through sheer terror and enforces this strict law of silence. So if you're a resident, every single day is a calculated risk. Who do you trust? And more importantly, who do you fear more? The source material makes this point crystal clear, and it is so important to understand. The state's official line is that the families living in these communities, they're the primary victims in all of this. The police aren't there to fight the people. They say they're there to free them from the grip of organized crime. Now, it would be really easy to look at all this and think, wow, that's Rio's problem. But that's just not the whole picture. Not even close. The violence you see in these favelas is being fueled by a massive, continent-wide criminal network. So where does all the money come from? Well, this war is financed by a pretty diverse and super lucrative portfolio. We're talking international drug routes, sophisticated arms smuggling, hijacking cargo trucks on the highways, and a system of extorting businesses and even residents inside the territories they control. Yeah, the Red Command doesn't operate in a vacuum. It has strategic contacts with Brazil's other major faction, the PCC. It's got alliances with violent groups like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua, and it relies on key partners in places like Bolivia and Paraguay to keep the drugs and guns flowing. What happens in Rio, it's just one piece on a much, much larger criminal chessboard. So, with all that said, what's the real price of this seemingly endless conflict? It's a battle where every single inch of ground gained comes at an absolutely immense cost. The toll here isn't just measured in bullets fired. It's measured in the lives of innocent people caught in the crossfire. It's in the police officers who fall in the line of duty. It's the constant instability that just tears communities apart.
And maybe the most tragic cost of all, it's the future of an entire generation of kids who are growing up thinking this violence is normal.
The source material really captures the state's justification for these high-risk operations in one powerful thought. The price of courage is high, but the cost of silence is even higher. The argument is, yeah, the fight is incredibly dangerous, but allowing crime to just take over and govern would be a far, far greater price for society to pay. But even in the middle of all this chaos, there is resistance. And it's not just coming from the police. Inside these communities, you have teachers, volunteers, and local leaders fighting a totally different kind of war. It's a war of ideas, of education, of offering young people a different path. And a lot of people argue that this is the real long-term battle against crime. And so all of this leaves us with one last, really difficult question. When the lines are this blurry, when the enemy is this dug in, and the human cost is this high, in a war that feels like it has no end, what does victory even look like?